Let's talk about it. Does it seem that J.P. Morgan is a target of an inordinate number of legal actions lately? Why is that, and is it justified? Two sides now. Andrew Stoltmann says it's justified. He's from the Stoltmann law offices. And with us, who says it's a witch hunt, is Mark Lopresti. He's with Tagliaferro and Lopresti. Mark, why is this a witch hunt, do you think?
Well, what bothers me about these cases is that, frankly, we are not seeing enough individual corporate actor responsibility. J.P. Morgan shareholders suffered $6.3 billion in pain with the losses as it relates to the London whale. We're now talking about something in the order of $20 billion, without question an unprecedented number to settle the potential charges related to the mortgage fraud. And I am still asking the question, as Andrew and I debated a couple of weeks ago on this show, where is the corporate actor responsibility, and why are the shareholders, why is the investing public being asked to continue to accept such what I think is an inordinate amount of pain in addition to the trading losses?
Andrew, I imagine the answer is because they did something wrong.
That's exactly it. I mean, if you take a look at the activity engaged in by J.P. Morgan, it's extremely problematic. You don't just have the London whale debacle where they paid out close to $1 billion and admitted to wrongdoing. They also paid over $400 million for energy manipulation charges. The firm is operating under 6 investigations by the Department of Justice. It's operating under 4 enforcement actions by the regulators. I mean, this is a firm that has engaged.
Mark, the question is that evidence that there is a specific agenda to go after J.P. I'm sorry, Andrew. Is that evidence that there's a specific agenda to go after J.P. Morgan, or just that they did a lot of things wrong?
The regulators have no incentive for going after just J.P. Morgan. It just so happens that they're one of the biggest, and they've engaged in some really, really serious misconduct. And I know what J.P. Morgan's apologists are saying is, gee, we're being targeted. But nobody has a gun to their head. If J.P. Morgan doesn't like this, they can fight these charges. They don't have to settle, but they're not doing that. They're settling because they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and they've got whacked really, really hard, and it's going to continue.
Doesn't this just point to the convoluted regulatory environment we live in today, where every time you turn around there's another legal action against them from another government entity? I mean, for Pete's sake, you know, let's settle this and move on. They made a mistake. They admit they made a mistake, but they're still paying for it because there are so many other agencies that smell blood in the water, and they feel like they can go after this company.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill. And part of the problem that we have now is the SEC's new policy of requiring firms to admit liability. And as we've discussed on this show in the past, that is going to open the floodgates to further shareholder pain. I'm not advocating giving Wall Street a pass. I'm not advocating ignoring wrongdoing, particularly where it impacts the shareholders and the investing public. But making the investing public write the tab to take the check at the end of the dinner, if you will, with fines that we're now talking about $10–20 million is insane.
That's the cost of doing business when you invest in a company. Come on. I mean,
Bill, that's right.
It's a risk,
Bill, more importantly, the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can both whack the firm and whack the individual people. I've been calling for a long time for more individual actions against the people who engage in the wrongdoing. But ultimately, if you make the firm itself pay, presumably, hopefully, the firm is going to implement the internal controls to stop that sort of activity. Hasn't worked for J.P. Morgan yet, but hopefully it will in the near future.
I mean, this kind of goes to the point that Andrew was just making. Do you try to make individuals accountable here for what happened? Why do people feel like they're watching constantly these settlements instead of anyone actually having to, say, go to jail over this?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the question of whether or not there's an agenda. I don't think that there's a so-called witch hunt that the regulators got together in a smoke-filled room and decided we're going to take down J.P. Morgan. What I do think is that the financial crisis still lacks the evil actor. It still lacks a face. Roger Rotman was certainly not a household name. Steve Cohen, we could talk about that for hours. But there is still a lack of an individual person that the regulators have been able to say it was that bad guy or bad guys.
Is that because there was no individual person, or they just haven't been able to make a good enough case?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think there were a lot of individual corporate bad actors that are letting go and are getting away with situations where the shareholders are, again, as I keep saying, being asked to pay the price tag. When these fines get paid, who pays them? And, Bill, I will tell you, as an investor, I don't know that I signed up when I bought J.P. Morgan stock 2 months ago for a $20 billion fine that HUD wants to bring now for mortgage charges.
Now you know.
Where
Guys,
are the charges
Andrew, I
against
know you're going to want to say
agencies?
something, but we got to go at this point. We're out of time, but we will have this discussion again. I guarantee it. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Thanks, guys.